So let's take another look at the function we started with at the very beginning, and that function was the function f of x equals the square root of x. So let's take another look at the example of f of x equal the square root of x. And I'm going to ask the question, what is the domain? What is the domain? Up until this point, the only way we've discovered domains is we've looked at the graph, okay? Now there's another way. The other way to deal with domains is to look at the function itself and say, are there restrictions on what I can put in for x? Well, if we just look at this function right here, what do we know from basic knowledge of mathematics? What do we know about the things we put in here in for x? All those things have to be positive numbers, because if you put a negative number in, you can't take a square root of a negative number. So our domain would be that x has to be positive or 0. X is positive or 0. And how do we rewrite that? X positive or 0 means x is greater than or equal to 0. Or, if you think about it on the number line, anything greater than or equal to 0 is anything from 0 to infinity. So the domain for this function is everything from 0 to infinity. Anything positive, nothing negative. Okay, let's look at another example. Let's take the function big G of x, and let's let it be 1 over x plus 3. Now, we're not going to graph it, but I am going to again ask, what is the domain for this function? What can we put in to our function and get a value? Wow, can you put negative numbers in here? Sure, you can put negative numbers in here. It's not under a square root. You can put negative numbers in here. Can you put 0? You can put 0. Can you put positive numbers? You can put positive numbers. What can't you put in here? The only thing you can't put in here is the number negative 3. Why? Because if you put negative 3 underneath, you get, if you put negative 3 in for x, you get a 0 in a denominator. And we know you cannot divide by 0. Basic, fundamental theorem. You can never have 0 in a denominator. You cannot divide by 0. So this domain would be everything except negative 3. So x is any number, any real number, except negative 3. Okay? So x can be anything except negative 3. If you're writing it in interval notation, it's kind of messy. It's everything up into negative 3. It's everything beyond negative 3 negative-wise, together with everything beyond negative 3 on the positive side. It's kind of icky looking. So this is fine. I would take anything except negative 3. And let's take a look at one more function then real quickly. Let's take a look at the last function here. Let's take the function f of x equals negative 4x. And again, I'm going to ask the question, are there any restrictions? What is the domain of x? Are there any restrictions on our function? What is the domain for this function? Can you put negatives? Yes. Can you put positives? Yes. Can you put 0? Yes. You can put everything. There is no restrictions on this, is it? In fact, if we were to graph it, it's a straight line. So the domain here is any real number. You can throw anything in there, any real number. Anything will satisfy this equation or this function. So the domain is anything. Okay, negative infinity to positive infinity.